Okay, guys, we're on to the last chapter for this week of the BFG. We're going to be looking at how the dream is mixed. But first of all, let's have a look at some predictions and some language that we might need to know first of all. So the word announce that comes up is when something is told or proclaimed, for example. So I'm announcing that today we are reading about the mixing of the dream for the Queen. Frobscuttle is the delicious, which is spelt incorrectly here. The delicious backwards fizzy drink tastes slightly of vanilla and raspberries that the BFG loves to drink. And so instead of burping, it makes you do, well, we know what it makes you do. And finally, contraption. Now, when we talk about contraptions, they're normally a machine or an invention that does a task, such as, it could be anything, boiling eggs, washing water, but they're often homemade devices that someone has put together themselves. So let's make a couple of predictions and have a quick recap. So in the last chapter, they devised a plan to involve the Queen by blowing in a dream about children being eaten and how Sophie and the BFG could save these children. No more characters have been introduced, but we've been discussing the Queen, so it's likely we're going to meet her soon. Predictions that we've made. Well, I was thinking, would a dream work? And what dreams is he going to put into it? What do you guys think? Can you make a prediction there based on the last chapter? Some observations. So I've noticed that the BFG now really trusts Sophie and seems to have grown attached to her already. And they're kind of like father and daughter. I mean, he's never had family and Sophie's never had family. So they're kind of like kindred spirits. Now, we can tell that Sophie trusts him because, that the BFG trusts her because she suggested the plan, which is very dangerous and might not work, but the BFG wants to do it anyway. Okay, guys, so let's read the next chapter. Mixing the dream. It was dark now. The night had already begun. The BFG with Sophie sitting on his hand hurried into the cave and put on those brilliant blinding lights that seemed to come from nowhere. He placed Sophie on the table. Stay there, please, he said, anew chittering. I was needing to listen only to silence when I was mixing up such a knotty, plexicated dream as this. He hurried away from her. He got out an enormous empty glass jar that was the size of a washing machine. He clutched it to his chest and hurried towards the shelves on which stood the thousands and thousands of smaller jars containing the captured dreams. Dreams about giants, he muttered to himself as he searched the labels. The giants is guzzling human beings. No, not that one. No, not one. Ah, here's one and here's another. He grabbed the jars and unscrewed the tops. He tipped the dreams into an enormous jar he was clutching. And as each one went in, Sophie caught a glimpse of a small sea green blob tumbling from one jar into the other. The BFG hurried towards another shelf. Now, he muttered, I was wanting dreams about giggle houses for girls and about boggle boxes for boys. He was becoming very tense now. Sophie could almost see the excitement bubbling inside him as he scurried back and forth amongst his beloved jars. They must have been 50,000 dreams altogether up there in the shelves. But he seemed to know almost exactly where every one of them was. Dreams about a little girl, he muttered, and dreams about me, about the BFG. Come on, hurry up, get on with it. Nowhere in the wonky world is I keeping those. And so it went on. In about half an hour, the BFG had found all the dreams he wanted, and he had tipped them into one huge jar. He put the jar on the table. Sophie sat watching him, but said nothing. Inside the big jar, lying on the bottom of it, she could clearly see about 50 of those oval sea greenish jellyfish shapes, all pulsing gently in and out, some lying on the tops of others, but each one still quite a separate individual dream. Now we is mixing them, the BFG announced. He went to the cupboard where he kept his bottles of Frobscuttle and took from it one gigantic egg beater. It was one of those that has a handle which you turn, and down there are lots of overlapping blades that go whizzing around. He inserted the bottom end of the contraption into the big jar where the dreams were lying. Watch, and he started turning the handle very fast. Flashes of green and blue exploded inside a jar. The dreams were being whisked into a sea green froth. Oh, the poor thing, Sophie cried. He's not feeling it, the BFG said as he turned the handle. Dreams is not like human beings or animals. They has no brains. They is made of zosimus. After about a minute, The BFG stopped whisking. The whole bottle was now full to the brim with large bubbles. They were almost exactly like the bubbles we ourselves blow from soapy water, except those that had even brighter and more beautiful colours swimming on their surfaces. Keep watching, the BFG said. Quite slowly, the topmost bubble rose up through the neck of the jar and floated away. A second one followed, then a third and a fourth, and soon the cave was filled with hundreds of beautiful coloured bubbles, all drifting gently through the air. It was a truly wonderful sight. As Sophie watched them, they started floating towards the cave entrance, which was still open. They're going out, Sophie whispered. Of course. But where to? Those is the tiny little dream bits that I isn't using, the BFG said. There's going back to the Misty Country to join up with proper dreams. It's all a bit beyond me, Sophie said. Dreams is full of mystery and magic, the BFG said. Do not try to understand them. Look in the big bottle, and you will now see that the dream you is wanting for the Queen. Sophie turned and stared into the great jar. At the bottom of it, something was thrashing around wildly, bouncing up and down and flinging itself against the wall. Good heavens, is that it? That's it, the BFG said proudly. But it's horrible. It's jumping about. It wants to get out. That's because it's a trockle humper. It's a nightmare. Oh, but I don't want you to give the Queen a nightmare. If she's dreaming about giants guzzling up little boys, then what is you expecting to be except a nightmare? The BFG said. Oh, no, Sophie cried. Oh, yes. A dream where you're seeing little children being eaten is almost frightsome, terrible hunger you can get. It's a Kixie Bog Thumper. It's a Wopsy Grob Switcher. It is all of them riddled into one. It is as bad as that dream I blew into the flesh lump this afternoon. It's worse. Sophie stared down at the fearful nightmare dream that was still thrashing away in the huge glass jar. It was much larger than the others. It was about the size of, say, a turkey's egg. It was a jellyfish. It had tinges of bright scarlet deep inside it. There was something terrible about the way it was throwing itself against the sides of the jar. I don't want to give the Queen a nightmare, Sophie said. I was thinking that your Queen will be happy to have a nightmare if having a nightmare is going to save lots of human beings from being gobbled up by filthy giants. Is I right or left? Oh, I suppose you're right. It's got to be done. She will soon be getting over it. Have you put all the other important things into it? Sophie asked. When I was blowing that dream into the Queen's bedroom, the BFG said, she will be dreaming every single thing-a-ling-a-ling you is asking me to make her dream. About me on the windowsill? That part is very strong. And about Big Friendly Giant? I was putting in a long, nice gobbet about him, the BFG said. As he spoke, he picked up one of his smaller jars and very quickly tipped the struggling, thrashing troggle humper out of the large jar into a small one. Then he screwed the lid tightly onto the small jar. That's it. We're ready now, he announced. He fetched his suitcase, put the small jar into it. Why bother to take such a great big suitcase when you've only got one jar? You could put your jar in your pocket. Why, goggles, he said, taking the jar out of the suitcase. Your head is not so quite full of grime sludge. After all, I can see you was not born last week. Thank you, kind sir, so Sophie said, making a little curtsy from the tabletop. Is you ready to leave? The BFG asked. I'm ready, Sophie cried. Her heart was beginning to thump at the thought of what they were about to do. It was really a wild and crazy thing. Perhaps they would both be thrown into prison. The BFG put on his great black cloak. He tucked the jar into his pocket. He picked up his long trumpet-like dream blower, and then he turned and he looked at Sophie, who was still on the tabletop. The dream bottle was in my pocket. You was going to sit in there with it during the travel. Never! I refuse to sit next to that beastly thing. Then where are you going to sit? Sophie looked over him for a few moments. Then she said, if you'd be kind enough to swivel one of your lovely big ears so that it's like lying flat like a dish, it would be a very cozy place for me to sit. By gumbo, that's a squawkling good idea, the BFG said. Slowly, he swiveled his huge right ear until it was like a great shell facing the heavens. He lifted Sophie up and placed her into it. The ear itself, which was about the size of a large tea tray, was full of the same channels and crinkles as a human ear. It was extremely comfortable. I hope I don't fall down your ear hole, Sophie said, edging away from the large hole just beside her. Be very careful not to do that. You would be giving me a cronking earache. The nice thing about being there was that she could whisper directly into his ear. He was tickling me a bit, the BFG said. Please don't jiggle about. I'll try not to, Sophie said. Are we ready? Oh-wee! Yelled the BFG. Don't do that. I didn't do anything. You were talking too loud. You was forgetting I was hearing every little thing-a-ling-a-ling 50 times louder than usual. And there you is, shouting right away inside my ear. Oh, gosh, Sophie murmured. I forgot that. Your voice is sounding like thunder and trumpets. I'm so sorry. Is that better? No, it sounds as though you're shooting off a blunderbuss. How can I talk to you? Don't, cried the poor BFG. Please don't. Each word is like you dropping buzz bombs in my ear hole. Sophie tried speaking right underneath her breath. Is this better? She said. Is this better? She said. She spoke softly. That's better, the BFG said. Now I was hearing you very nicely. What is it you were trying to say to me now? I was saying, are we ready? We is off, cried the BFG, heading for the cave entrance. We is off to meet Her Majesty the Queen. Outside the cave, he rolled the round stone back into place and set off at a tremendous gallop. What an awesome place to leave our story ready for next week. I hope you guys have enjoyed all the chapters this week, and what an awesome build-up it has been. I've really enjoyed learning about the dreams, especially, and how the BFG can blow dreams into people's minds. I've also learned how amazing Sophie is and how resilient she is. Okay, guys, have a lovely weekend, and I will speak to you soon, ready with some more class chapters. Bye.